The debris is consistent with the catastrophic loss of the pressure chamber. We immediately notified the families.
A tragic ending to the search for a missing submersible near the Titanic with 5 people on board. Thank you for joining us. I'm Laurel Porter.
And I'm David Moko. The Coast Guard says the Titan likely suffered a catastrophic implosion, which would have killed everybody on board. Officials say a remote-operated vehicle found a debris field on the ocean floor this morning, some 1,600 feet from the bow of the Titanic. Analysts have confirmed it includes at least 5 different pieces of the Titan. They include the tail cone sections of the pressure chamber, which was the passenger area for the 5 men on board. They include the CEO of the company operating the expedition and a British-Pakistani businessman and his teenage son. The Titan lost contact on Sunday, less than 2 hours after it began its descent to survey the wreckage of the Titanic. It is unclear exactly when the sub imploded, though officials say all indications are it was before the search was underway. We'll keep you posted as new details come in.
In local headlines, the plywood fence surrounding the Multnomah County Courthouse will soon be coming down. It was put up 3 years ago after a violent summer of protests, resulting in broken windows and vandalism.
Kyle Lavoshi is at the courthouse downtown. Kyle, you've been talking to Portlanders today about this change, which in many ways is symbolic.
David, it feels like plywood is kind of a fixture in downtown Portland. A lot of buildings and storefronts are all covered up. This really is one of the most vivid examples, the Multnomah County Courthouse, shielded by a wall of plywood. But soon that'll change.
A little worried.
County officials hope to remove the temporary wooden fence surrounding the courthouse by early July. The newly minted courthouse, which opened in October of 2020, suffered nearly $500,000 in damage between 2020 and 2022. There were broken windows, graffiti, and other property damage during the racial justice protests. Some people we spoke with feel the removal of the fencing is an important symbol of progress in restoring downtown Portland. They just hope there's no more damage.
A little worried. I think it'll help. Obviously, taking the boards down makes it a more inviting place for people to feel more comfortable to come back. But I do have some concerns.
You know, I can see why it's there, but it's necessary to come down for people to interact and for the feeling of like a normal building exterior to be presented, you know.
It will look friendlier, but they still need to be sure that it's safe, because we don't want anyone getting hurt going in or out of the courthouse.
As for other government buildings in downtown Portland, the Justice Center, which repeatedly targeted by protests, will remain partially boarded up. A county spokesperson said officials are still in the planning stages, evaluating alternatives to help increase protection and security. For now, the boards and fencing will also stay up at the Mark Hatfield Federal Courthouse. It was the site of many skirmishes between protests and federal agents in the summer of 2020. According to federal officials, there's no timeline for when that heavy metal fencing may come down at the federal courthouse.
Thank you, Kyle. Okay, right now, Blazers fans, we are on pins and needles. The NBA draft is underway in New York, with Rip City set to pick third, the highest chance the franchise has had in over 15 years.
Oh, you can feel the excitement between the two of us here. Let's get right to Orlando Sanchez. He is watching the action from Trailblazers, their practice facility in Tualatin. Orlando, this could be the pivotal moment in Blazers history. Where are we in the picks? What are you watching for?
No pressure, right, David? Yes, the suspense is building here in Rip City. We are a couple of minutes away from the San Antonio Spurs being on the clock with the #1 overall pick. And yes, there's no surprise there in what the Spurs are going to do. They'll take Victor Wembanyama, #1. The party gets started when the Charlotte Hornets are on the clock with the second pick. Once they make their decision, then we know what the Portland Trail Blazers have in front of them, what player is going to be available, and then they can look at what trade offers are on the table for this team. And then things get even more interesting because they're trying to do all of this in a 5-minute window. Talk about drama. The front office will be deciding between 2 high-profile prospects with tremendous upside if they decide to make the pick. Either G League point guard Scoot Henderson, who's drawing comparisons to former MVPs, or Alabama wing Brandon Miller, arguably the best player in college basketball this past season, who just happens to fit a position of need for the Portland Trail Blazers. And here at the practice facility, we're just a few steps away from where the war room is, where Trailblazers brass will be making that decision, you know, just one that will impact the franchise for years to come. So, as we mentioned, take a deep breath, Portland Trailblazers fans. We are a couple of minutes away from a huge decision here in Rip City. Back to you.
It's hard to relax. Yeah.
I'm just going to breathe here.
Can you imagine only 5 minutes to make that sort of
Add so many moving parts, much more than even just one game, right? Wow.
Thanks, Orlando. We'll check back in with you towards the end of the show. On day 4 of the Providence nurses strike, a national union leader came to support the picket line at Providence, Portland.
So this strike is a moral contract. It is a moral strike. It is a just strike. Yes, it's against greed.
That was Randy Weingarten, president of the American Federation of Teachers, which also represents nurses, rallying strikers today.
About 1,800 nurses remain on strike, they say, to show they are serious about negotiating better pay, benefits, and working conditions. Now, Providence had previously offered nurses a 12% raise in the first year of the contract and smaller raises in later years. Today, Providence's chief of nursing said while hospitals may be getting by with temporary replacement nurses, the strike is still taking a toll.
I think the strike has been very disruptive and emotional and expensive for all parties involved. And I think it's important that we come back together and really look at a fair and reasonable contract.
Well, the strike is set to wrap up tomorrow. No word when negotiations might resume.
Portlanders near Southeast 148th and Stark were asked to stay inside their homes for most of the day. Police were searching for suspects in an overnight shooting that injured 2 people. That shelter-in-place order was lifted about 3 hours ago, and there's no more danger to the neighborhood. Let's bring in Blair Best now. But Blair, detectives are still on the scene.
Laurel, the shooting happened just before 1 o'clock this morning, and police have been on scene for most of the day searching for the suspects. It all ended when they detained 8 juveniles who were hiding inside an apartment building behind me. Now, Portland police first responded to a shooting on Southeast 146th Avenue and Stark Street, where 2 people were injured and taken to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. Now, officers then saw the suspects run into a nearby apartment building. That's where they spent most of the day searching. Everyone around here was told to stay inside. That order was lifted around 2 o'clock, though, once the building was cleared. It's been a long, drawn-out search for these suspects, but those who live in this community aren't surprised.
It's just another day in Portland.
I don't know what to think about the juveniles. We seem to have lost all kinds of control over the kids.
I hate to say I'm used to it, but, you know, I'm more acclimated to it. It doesn't really shock me, you know.
Now, Southeast 148th and Stark is now back open, and Portland police say no arrests have been made, but again, 8 juveniles have been detained. And just to give you some more context on the gun violence that this community is dealing with, I talked with a man who says he heard about 20 gunshots last night, but since it happens so often, he didn't even get out of bed. David, Laurel.
And that is truly startling. Thank you, Blair. Let's take you to Gladstone now, where police are investigating a terrifying and violent home invasion. Authorities say a suspect broke into a home last night and then attacked a woman, leaving her bleeding on the floor. Mike Benner is in the newsroom. Mike, this sounds absolutely awful. You talked to the victim's mother. What did she tell you?
Yeah, David, she told me she lives at the home with her daughter and 2 grandsons, and she is beyond rattled by what happened. She says barking dogs alerted her to the problem. She got out of bed to investigate, and that's when she found her adult daughter lying on the floor bleeding. This happened around 2:15 this morning at a home near the corner of Crownview Drive and Crownview Court in Gladstone. Authorities tell us the intruder got into the home through an unlocked sliding glass door on the back deck. At this point, it's unclear if this was a random attack or targeted. Regardless, the suspect assaulted a woman in the home, maybe with a hammer, then took off. Responding officers from Gladstone PD, Oregon City PD, and the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office searched for the suspect with canines and drones, but they came up empty. The chief of police in Gladstone tells me this home invasion is unusual, but for the victim and her family,
probably terrifying, without a doubt, a lot of trauma. You know, the first aid, the victim's still in the hospital, non-life-threatening injuries, thank God, you know, but her family's still having to deal with this, and she's going to be recovering for a while.
And our thoughts are certainly with the victim. We understand that because it was dark at the time of the attack, the victim did not get a great look at the suspect, but she believes he was stocky and possibly wearing a mask. Anyone with information about the case is urged to contact the Gladstone Police Department. Laurel?
Terrifying for sure, and we hope they can catch that suspect. Thank you, Mike.